Our next talk is by Pierre Antoine Héritier, who's a conservator of modern and contemporary art. He works for institutions and private collections in his studio, Atelier, Héritier, Sàrl in Geneva. And he regularly participates in workshops by Gilbert Delacroix, Richard Wolbers, Paolo Cremonese, and François Perego. This is another talk that's going to be in Spanish.
For some time, we have been studying in collaboration with Paolo Cremonese the implementation of surface cleaning techniques which are sensitive to leaching and brightness phenomena. And this is the Picasso under observation. Let's see if it works.
Ya funciona. Observemos este Picasso de los años 60, de los cuales le presentó una visita guiada en el material pictórico de la obra gracias a la tecnología 3D de Artmin. Podemos ver, este Picasso fue comprado a un subasta por 30.000 personas, es un poco particular. 30.000 personas tienen una parte de este Picasso. Podemos ver que Picasso...
We can see that he used Ripollin and oil paint or other mixtures and superimposed or simultaneous layers in a relatively absorbent and unusual support. A board painted with on matte brown recovered from a piece of furniture. Here we can see that Picasso has viscosity with his paint. We can see all the creases. I'm going to do it with my finger because it's not working. So our observation of numerous works by Picasso sometimes leads us to find surfaces that have never been cleaned before, not even superficially. And that's why we get the velvety aspect of paint, which is totally and completely intact. For instance, this velvety aspect, this effect of prurinosity, which appears frequently in his works of the 50s to the 70s. We are not talking about efflorescence or a superficial crystallization. Rather, it is a surface state, and this aspect, prurinosity aspect, tends to a cleaning, which leads to an increase in gloss and eliminating this origin and historical appearance. In this very techniques used by Picasso, there are opacities of drying, lackluster areas alternated with areas of strong brightness, which are a full part of the work. In fact, these characteristics are particularly sensitive to a unification of the surface. Some phenomena, this prurinosity on the surface of several Picasso's areas, are related with the syneresis of the film of painting during drying, which consists of very important role for the surface, contributing technical in the visual aspects, either gloss or brightness or matte. This phenomenon is seen in lacquered Ripollin type paintings or polymerized oils, and frequently with added products. This effect is not systematic in production and depends on the mixture used by Picasso and the formula, which varies depending on seasons and the different brands. An example of this is the dry Ripollin pearl gray, which the same appearance changes in aspect and tonality. Here we can see an analysis, and we can see it's pretty different. When this phenomenon takes place, it seems to be relatively fast and contemporaneous to creation, which makes it part of the work. Here we can see a very clear description of this prurinosity effect in lacquered paint in an encyclopedia of polymers by Gauche, in order to determine the impact of the visual changes that may result from improper cleaning. We have compared this type of paints with the famous periodicity that covers certain fruits and plants. From a visual point of view, this periodicity increases reflection and diffusion. When we eliminate these effects, we considerably modify the effect of colorimetric perception, inducing a change of reflection and brightness, which leads to a serious chromatic change. Our measurements of luminance before and after, and colorimetry and brightness before and after cleaning on a work found in the street market show strikingly that the elimination of the velvety effects is similar to a pruinistic form which drastically modifies the structure of the work. Here we can see, let's see whether this works. So here we can see the cleaned part with the effect of pruinosity has been removed, and it's very visible whenever we get closer. We see there's some creases as a result of pruinosity, but the general result is a significant change of appearance. We see it here in this pot. So in the context of the surface cleaning intervention, we find more or less greasy soils on heterogeneous pictorial surfaces, so we can face a mate matter and a pore binder, hydrophilic or hydrophobic, mimicking the leaf of the lotus flower. Here we can see the particular structure of the lotus flower with its micrometric sized peaks covered with our wax nanometric hairs. Here we can see the oil. In the case of hydrophobic surfaces, and in order to fight the wettability difficulties, cleaning actions can generate irreversible processes of densification or superficial microlosses, which takes to abrasion. The fragmentation and of the material showing as a pressing down of roughness. Here we can see this damage on two of Picasso's works. This is a sad image. And this mechanical action of compression of the superficial material creates linear facets which are parallel to the surface, creating a brighter zone where the specular reflection is dominant. We can see that the effect of the increase of brightness in hyperspectral images has a vertical translation of the spectrum, which is similar to a white pigment to color. And apart from this technique, and here we can see the different curves, and apart from this technique, we have also observed through the 3D technology these effects of increase in brightness. Beyond these phenomena, there is the hydrolysis of the film, especially with fast propagation of water through the different strata by vertical diffusion. So related to this, we talk about the coffee ring effect, which is a migration of suspension particles towards the edges due to the strong capillary fluid. And it's also noted that there's a certain amount of surfactants which are frequently trapped in the original texture, which is still widely used in cleaning solutions. This will have almost the same impact as frictions, generating refractive index changes and also an influence on the colored perception. In order to illustrate the importance of the colorimetric changes by this reflection. Observe what happens when we add a drop of solvent on the wing of our iridescent blue butterfly. The simple modification of the index, the area is 1. It goes from 1 to 136, and we see that blue turns into green, and at 148, as we can see, products of refraction disappears, and we can see the ketine of insects, which is less nice. This study proposes the evaluation of the impact of cotton swab cleaning processes compared to the combined use technique with micro-aspiration and controlled supply of liquid. It's called MALDE. This comparison work between the two cleaning methods stresses the consequences of a substantial contribution of moisture on a paint layer, such as swelling, hydrolysis, and on the risks of colorimetric changes due to mechanical modifications, brightness, and opacity. And in light of our professional experience and the several tests on paint done for this study, it is confirmed that the methods that allow less contact time between water and work, and also the reduction of the pressure on the surface to be treated, results in safer intervention with the minimum possible interaction. The principle of this innovative technique results from the simultaneous action of dispensing, which can be chosen depending on their flexibility. The risks of surface modifications are reduced. Here we can see the effects. This MALDE technique also allows us to reduce the surface tension or strain, breaking the different droplets of shear without the risk of the cotton swabs. The contact angle changes when the liquid is in motion, deforming the contact surface between the two media, liquid and solid. And here, wettability is facilitated, physically interacting on the surface tension forces. And thanks to the action of this dispenser brush, we can reduce the kinetic angle of contact more effectively than with a cotton swab, increasing the value of the wettability rate. This type of tools with their varied alternatives allows us to adapt the quality of fibers and the positioning of the interventions. These qualities allow us for a more efficient cleaning and a shorter contact time between the liquid and the treated surface. This time is reduced even further with the fact that the cleaning solution and the dirt are almost simultaneously aspirated. Here we can see it. Obviously, and as with traditional techniques, it is essential to carry out tests on the solutions and measure the pH and conductivity of the surface. With the aim of further reducing the humidification time, we have a more perfection system developed and manufactured thanks to a 3D printer, which combines aspiration and drying and thanks to the dual chamber principle. The first chamber allows for smooth aspiration through a set of brushes with soft bristles, and each one in the center has a small hole which facilitates the aspiration of cleaning liquids. The second chamber, inserted inside the piece itself, allows to inflate a slight breath of air which favors the evaporation of residual moisture. In order to judge the qualities of this innovation in terms of efficiency, but also mechanical innocuousness, we have tested and analyzed quantitatively and qualitatively the effects of an increase in brightness on paints, and they're covered by a matte paint layer without excessive porosity, with pigments used by Picasso linked with a polyurethane resin which imitates in an acceptable way aged paint. These have been covered by artificial dirt as realistic as possible in Picasso's works, based on Sàrl, to then prove both cleaning techniques. The increase with the cotton swab are visible on the specimens. Although it's practically impossible to avoid them completely on this type of matte finishing. We have also seen a clear tendency to pigmentary oxidation during the test with the cotton swab. It's quite frightening. Unlike the new Malde system, there is a light color with some brushes because the platelet is quite fragile. We carried out a series of tests. I can't really show you because we don't have time. But as a summary, we more or less can see the specimen P03 with cadmium red and titanium white. The examination of spectral hyperversion quantifies the images of very narrow spectra. We observe a variation of the spectral curve with the two techniques. Here we see the different wavelengths of the light source, which allows us to have a better perception of the increase in brightness, which are clearly more important or significant with the swab. Here we can see the Malde technique and the cotton swab technique. The level of brightness on surface has been measured before and after using a brightness meter and a microphotographic documentation or supporting elements. They all have the same angle with a microscopic photograph. Also, some luminance tests with collimated light and the colorimetry of the surface was proved. We see that the increase of brightness is quite marked with the swab, and the variation of the colorimetric coordinators are similar between the two techniques. Here you can see the difference. Almost 160% more brightness.
Al contrario, como conclusión,
And as a conclusion, the traditional cotton swab technique, and contrary to this technique, the micro-aspiration system allows to manage the emission of cleaning liquid and the mechanical behavior of the tools which are in contact with the paint layer. Thank you very much for your attention.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
no me pasé.
Does anybody have any questions? Any questions? I was wondering. Oh, en français.
Non, pas là.
I was wondering how your system, how the micro-aspiration system is different from other similar systems in the past. I mean, I'm not a conservator, so I don't know the specifics. But for example, Karol Dignard at CCI and Stefan Mikowski have done different kinds of devices in the past, and I was just wondering how this differs. You talked about
En realidad, es un.
Actually, this is an old we follow this old idea, and we implement technical improvements. And I would say that rather than aspiration, it's deposition that is particular. It's a temporized process that allows us to introduce micro quantities that wouldn't be possible with other techniques. I still use the cotton swab, but since 2 years ago, I started using this technique for an intervention that wasn't able, or that wasn't successful with other techniques.
You also talk about 3D printing. How was that? Did you say 3D printing
Sí.
for the actual device?
En realidad es que
Well, actually, I conceived a piece and I injured myself, and then I realized that that engineers exist and these people do wonderful things. So they develop a chamber where the liquid fluid goes through, and another one with air, and this was possible with 3D printing.
Thank you.
de nada.